My mother looked me dead in the eyes after 7 years, and the first thing out of her mouth was, "Oh, you're still alive?" Not, "Where have you been?" Not, "I missed you." She looked me up and down like I was something the wind blew onto her porch, and she was deciding whether to sweep me off. My name is Corinne Jessup. I am 31 years old, and for 7 years I did not exist to the people who brought me into this world. I need you to understand something before I tell you what happened that day. I did not go back to that house because I wanted anything from them. I did not go back because I missed them. I went back because there was a woman named Dorothea Pemberton who spent the last 6 years of her life teaching me what love actually looks like. She died holding my hand, and her final wish was that I stop running from the people who hurt me. She told me that closure is not something other people give you. It is something you take. So I drove 8 hours from upstate New York to a little town in Ohio where I grew up. I drove a 10-year-old sedan with 200,000 miles on it. I wore jeans and a plain jacket, no jewelry, no makeup. I looked exactly like the girl they threw away, and I did that on purpose. I wanted them to see me as I was, not as what I had become, because what I had become was something none of them could have imagined in 1,000 years. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about the people standing inside that house. My mother, Lorraine Jessup, is 58 years old and has never once in her life admitted she was wrong about anything. She's the kind of woman who can make you feel 6 inches tall with one look. She has a voice that cuts through walls, and she uses it like a weapon. When I was 12 years old, she looked at me across the kitchen table and said, "You were a mistake, Corinne. I was not ready for you. Your sister was the one I planned." She said it the same way you might tell someone the weather. No emotion, no regret, just a fact she wanted me to carry for the rest of my life. And I did carry it. For years, I carried it everywhere I went. My father, Dale Jessup, is 61. He is a quiet man. Some people might call him gentle. I call him a coward. In 31 years, my father never once raised his voice to defend me. Not once. He would sit in his recliner with the television on and pretend he could not hear my mother tearing me apart in the next room. He would stare at the screen like the volume could drown out what was happening to his own daughter. I used to think he was afraid of my mother. Now I know the truth. He just did not care enough to fight for me. My sister, Tamsin, is 27. She was the golden child from the day she was born. She got the new clothes, she got the birthday parties, she got the dance lessons, and the praise and the hugs I never received. Tamsin learned early that the easiest way to stay in my mother's good graces was to join in when Lorraine went after me. So she did. She mocked me. She repeated the things my mother said behind my back. She told her friends at school that I was the weird one, the difficult one, the one the family wished they could trade in. And the worst part is, I do not think Tamsin even enjoyed being cruel. She just knew it kept her safe. Then there is my Uncle Burl. He is 63, my mother's older brother, and he has never met a situation he could not make worse. Burl is the one who told the entire extended family that I was rebellious and ungrateful. He is the one who made sure that when I left, nobody came looking for me. He poisoned every well before I ever had a chance to drink from it. These are the people who were standing inside that house when I knocked on the door. And I knocked. I stood on that porch with my heart slamming against my ribs, and I knocked 3 times. I heard footsteps. I heard the lock turn. And when that door opened, my mother stood there in the same floral housecoat she wore when I was a teenager, and she looked at me the way you might look at a bill you forgot to pay. "Oh," she said, "you're still alive." Tamsin appeared behind her, leaning against the hallway wall with a coffee mug in her hand, and she laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not a surprised laugh, a mean laugh, the kind of laugh that has a target. "Don't let her in, Mom," Tamsin said. "She'll ask for money. That's the only reason she'd come back." I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. 7 years. 7 years of building myself into something. 7 years of learning what I was worth. And in 3 seconds flat, they stripped it all away. I was 12 years old again, standing in that kitchen, hearing my mother tell me I was a mistake. I turned around. I walked down those porch steps. I told myself I would not cry. Not here. Not in front of them. I would get to my car, I would drive away, and I would never come back. That was the plan, but the plan changed. Because as my hand touched the door handle of my car, I heard a sound behind me, a low, heavy rumble, the kind of engine that does not belong on a street like this. I turned around and saw a black sedan pulling up to the curb, sleek and polished, with tinted windows that reflected the afternoon sun like dark mirrors. The car stopped directly behind mine. The driver's door opened. A broad-shouldered man in a dark suit stepped out and walked to the rear passenger door. He opened it with the precision of someone who has done this 1,000 times. 2 more men stepped out from the other side, both in tailored suits, both standing with their hands clasped in front of them. Bodyguards. There was no other word for what they were. And then the rear passenger emerged. A tall man, silver-haired, carrying a leather briefcase. He adjusted his tie, looked directly at me, and said in a calm, measured voice, "Ma'am, they've been waiting for you." I stared at him. I had never seen this man before, in my life. I told him he had the wrong person. He did not blink. He did not hesitate. "Corinne Elaine Jessup?" he said. Behind me, I heard the front door creak open wider. I did not need to turn around to know that every single person in that house was now standing on the porch, staring. The laughter was gone. The mockery was gone. The cruelty that had greeted me 60 seconds earlier had been replaced by something I had never once seen on my family's faces when they looked at me. Fear. And what happened next changed everything, not just for me. For every single person standing on that porch, and I promise you, not one of them saw it coming. I grew up in a house where love had a price tag, and I could never afford it. We lived in a small town about 40 minutes south of Columbus, Ohio, the kind of place where everybody knows everybody, and nobody minds their own business. Our house sat at the end of Birchwood Lane, a 2-story place with white siding that was turning gray and a front yard my father never bothered to mow until the neighbors complained. From the outside, we looked like any other family. From the inside, we were anything but. My mother, Lorraine, ran that house like a courtroom, and she was always the judge. Every morning started with her voice cutting through the hallway, barking orders at me before my feet even hit the floor. Make breakfast, clean the kitchen, get your sister's clothes ready, iron your father's shirt. I was not a daughter in that house. I was staff. And the worst part was that nobody thought it was strange. Not my father, not my uncle, not the neighbors who saw me hanging laundry at 7 in the morning on a school day. It was just how things were. Corinne does the work. That is her role. Tamsin never lifted a finger. She would come downstairs with her hair brushed and her outfit picked out by our mother, sit at the table, and eat the breakfast I made without ever once saying thank you. If I said anything about it, my mother would shut me down before the sentence was finished. "Your sister is younger than you, Corinne. She needs more attention." Tamsin was 4 years younger than me. By the time she was 10, she had already learned that I was beneath her. My mother taught her that. And Tamsin was a very good student. My father existed in that house the way furniture exists. He was there. He took up space. But he did not do anything. Dale Jessup worked at a hardware store 5 days a week, came home, sat in his recliner, turned on the television, and checked out. I used to stand in the doorway of the living room and look at him, hoping he would look back, hoping he would ask me how my day was, hoping he would say something, anything, that told me he knew I was alive. He never did. He just stared at the screen and let my mother run the show. I think in his mind, silence meant he was not taking sides. But silence is a side. It is the side of whoever is doing the harm. Uncle Burl came over every Sunday for dinner, and every Sunday he found a new way to remind me that I was the problem in this family. He would sit at the head of the table like he owned the place and tell stories about how Tamsin was going to do great things. Then he would look at me and say something like, "And what about you, Corinne? Still planning to amount to nothing?" Everyone would laugh. My mother, my sister, even my father would crack a smile. I was the family joke, and they never got tired of telling it. I graduated high school with a 3.8 GPA. Nobody came to the ceremony. My mother said she had a headache. My father said he had to work. Tamsin said she did not feel like sitting in a gym for 2 hours. I walked across that stage, took my diploma, and sat back down next to a boy named Kevin Garland, whose parents were in the third row, cheering so loud the principal had to ask them to settle down. I looked at that empty space where my family should have been, and something inside me cracked. Not broke, cracked. There is a difference. Broken means you stop. Cracked means the light starts getting in. I worked 2 jobs after graduation. I waitressed at a diner on Route 33 during the day and stocked shelves at a grocery store at night. I saved every dollar I could. My mother never asked where the money went. She assumed I was wasting it. She told Tamsin I would be pregnant and broke within a year. Instead, at 20, I moved into a studio apartment above a laundromat on the east side of town. It was small. It smelled like detergent. And it was the first place in my life where nobody told me I was a mistake. For 4 more years, I kept my distance, but stayed close enough to feel the pull. I would drive past the house sometimes, hoping something had changed. It never did. Then one night, when I was 24, I went over for what I told myself would be a conversation. I wanted to ask my mother one question. Just one. Why did you treat me the way you did? I never got to ask it. The moment I walked through the door, Lorraine started in on me about how I thought I was better than everyone because I had my own apartment. Uncle Burl was there, nodding along, adding fuel to every fire she started. Tamsin sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone, smirking like she was watching a show. And my father sat in his recliner, staring at the television, pretending none of it was happening. That was the night my mother told me not to come back, and I listened. I packed 1 suitcase, put $400 in my pocket, and drove north until I ran out of highway. I did not know where I was going. I just knew I was never going back to that house again. I ended up in upstate New York with no plan and no people. I slept in my car for the first 3 nights in a parking lot behind a church in a town called Warrensburg. I ate gas station sandwiches and washed my face in public restrooms. I was 24 years old, alone for the first time in my life, and so scared I could feel it in my teeth. On the 4th day, I walked into a diner to use the restroom and saw a flyer pinned to the bulletin board near the door. It said, "Live-in housekeeper needed. Room and board included. Must be reliable and discreet. Apply in person." There was an address underneath. No phone number, no name. Just an address on a road I had never heard of. I drove out there that same afternoon. The road wound through thick trees for nearly 2 miles before opening up to a property that took my breath away. A stone mansion sat at the top of a gentle hill, surrounded by gardens and a low iron fence. The kind of place you see in magazines and assume nobody actually lives in, but somebody did. Her name was Dorothea Pemberton. She was 80 years old when I met her, and she answered her own front door in a cream-colored cardigan and pearl earrings, standing barely 5 feet tall, with a spine straighter than mine. She looked at me the way nobody in my life had ever looked at me. Not with judgment, not with pity, with curiosity. "You are young," she said. "I am willing to work," I told her. She stared at me for a long moment, then stepped aside and said, "Come in. I will decide if that is enough." It was enough. I started that week. For the first year, I cleaned. I cleaned floors and windows and bathrooms and a kitchen bigger than the apartment I had left behind. I organized closets. I dusted shelves lined with books Dorothea had been collecting for 60 years. I cooked meals from recipes she handwrote on index cards and kept in a tin box on the counter. I did not complain. I did not ask questions. I showed up every single day, and I did the work. Dorothea watched me. I did not realize it at first, but she was studying me the way a teacher studies a student she is not sure about yet. She would sit in her chair by the window with a cup of tea and observe me while I worked. Sometimes she would say something small. "You missed a spot on the baseboard, dear." Or, "That vase goes on the left side, not the right." But other times, she would say things that stopped me in my tracks. Things like, "You carry yourself like someone who was told she takes up too much space." I did not answer her when she said that. I just kept cleaning. But she saw the way my hands tightened on the rag, and she never brought it up again. Not until I was ready. By the 2nd year, Dorothea started asking me to sit with her during meals instead of eating alone in the kitchen. She told me about her life. Her late husband, a real estate developer named George Pemberton, had built their fortune from nothing. They had one daughter, a girl named Catherine, who died of ovarian cancer at 43. After Catherine passed, Dorothea shut the world out. She fired most of her staff. She stopped attending charity events. She sat alone in that enormous house and waited for the end. Then I showed up. "You remind me of Catherine," she told me one evening. "Not in how you look, in how you try." Catherine never stopped trying, even when the world gave her every reason to quit. That sentence broke something open inside me, because trying was the one thing I had always done, and it was the one thing my family had always punished me for. Every time I tried to be better, they pushed me down. Every time I tried to be seen, they looked through me. But Dorothea saw my effort. She respected it, and over time, she rewarded it. By the 3rd year, she promoted me from housekeeper to personal assistant. By the 4th year, I was managing her entire estate: finances, property upkeep, medical appointments, legal correspondence. She trusted me with everything. I sat beside her at meetings with her attorney, Mr. Leland Croft, and he treated me with the same respect he gave her. I was no longer the girl who slept in her car behind a church. I was Corinne Jessup, estate manager for one of the wealthiest women in the county. And not a single person in my family knew. I never called home. Not once. I thought about it sometimes, late at night when the house was quiet and the weight of everything I had been through pressed down on me like a hand on my chest. But every time I picked up the phone, I heard my mother's voice in my head. "You were a mistake." And I put the phone back down. Then Dorothea got sick. It started with a cough that would not go away. Dorothea waved it off for weeks, telling me it was nothing, telling me she had survived worse than a little tickle in her chest. But I knew something was wrong. I had spent 5 years watching this woman move through her house with the precision of a clock, and suddenly the clock was slowing down. She got tired in the afternoons. She stopped finishing her meals. She would fall asleep in her chair by the window before the sun even set. I drove her to the doctor on a Tuesday morning in March. She did not want to go. She sat in the passenger seat with her arms crossed and told me I was being dramatic. But when the doctor came back into the room after the tests, his face told us everything his words had not yet said. Dorothea had congestive heart failure. It was advanced. Treatment could slow it, but it could not stop it. She took the news the way she took everything. With her chin up and her back straight, she thanked the doctor, stood from the chair, and walked out of the office without a single tear. I was the one who cried in the parking lot. She sat beside me, put her hand on my arm, and said, "Do not waste your tears on the inevitable, Corinne. Save them for the things that surprise you." The next 8 months were the most painful and the most beautiful of my life. I moved into the room next to hers so I could hear her if she called out in the night. I cooked every meal she asked for, even the ones that took 3 hours. I read to her in the evenings, mostly poetry she loved from a book with a cracked leather spine that had belonged to her daughter, Catherine. I brushed her hair. When her hands got too weak to hold the brush, I did everything I could to make her comfortable, and she did everything she could to make me ready, because Dorothea knew something I did not. She had already changed her will. One evening, about 2 months before she passed, she asked me to sit with her on the back porch. The sun was going down behind the tree line, and the air smelled like pine and damp earth. She was wrapped in a wool blanket, and her voice was softer than I had ever heard it. "Corinne," she said, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without arguing." I nodded. "I have asked Leland to update my estate documents. When I am gone, everything I have will go to you." I opened my mouth to protest. She raised one thin hand and stopped me. "You are going to tell me you do not deserve it. You are going to tell me I should give it to a charity or a hospital or a museum. And I am going to tell you that I have spent 81 years on this earth deciding what to do with my own money, and I am not about to let a 30-year-old girl from Ohio talk me out of my last decision." I could not speak. My throat closed up and my eyes burned, and I just sat there looking at this woman who had given me more in 6 years than my own family had given me in 24. "You came to me with nothing," she said, "and you gave me everything. You gave me company. You gave me honesty. You gave me someone to love when I thought that part of my life was over. I do not care what your mother told you, Corinne. You are not a mistake. You are the best thing that ever walked through my door." Dorothea Pemberton passed away on a cold morning in January of 2025. I was sitting beside her bed, holding her hand when she took her last breath. The room was quiet. The house was quiet. The whole world felt like it had paused for just a moment to let her go. I stayed at the estate for 3 weeks after the funeral. Mr. Croft called several times, asking me to come in and review the documents. I could not do it. Every room in that house still smelled like her perfume, and I was not ready to sit in a lawyer's office and talk about numbers when the only number that mattered to me was the number of days I had left to grieve. Then one morning I woke up and heard Dorothea's voice in my head as clearly as if she were standing beside me. She said the same thing she had told me the day we met. "I will decide if that is enough." And I knew what I had to do. I was not going to a lawyer's office. I was going home. Not because I wanted my family back, but because I needed to stand on that porch one last time, look my mother in the eye, and know in my bones that I had survived her. I got in my car and I drove south. Mr. Leland Croft stood on my parents' cracked driveway, like he had been cut from a different world and placed into this one by accident. His suit alone probably cost more than every piece of furniture inside that house combined. The 2 men flanking him stood perfectly still, hands clasped, eyes forward. They were not there to intimidate. They were there because that is how things operated in Dorothea Pemberton's world. Even in death, she carried herself with dignity, and the people who served her did the same. Mr. Croft looked at me and said, "Miss Jessup, I have been trying to locate you for several weeks. Mrs. Pemberton left very specific instructions regarding how this matter was to be handled. She wanted it done in person. She wanted you to hear it from me directly." I could barely breathe. I knew Dorothea had told me about the will, but standing there on that broken driveway with my family frozen on the porch behind me, it did not feel real. None of it felt real. Mr. Croft opened his leather briefcase and removed a thick document bound with a blue cover. He also pulled out a sealed envelope with my name written across the front in handwriting I recognized instantly. Dorothea's handwriting, shaky but deliberate. Every letter placed with care. He held up the document first. "This is the last will and testament of Dorothea Ann Pemberton, revised and notarized in September of 2024. I served as the executor and primary witness. The document has been reviewed and accepted by the Sullivan County Probate Court." He paused and looked directly at me. "Mrs. Pemberton has named you, Corinne Elaine Jessup, as the sole primary beneficiary of her estate. The total estimated value, including the property, financial holdings, investments, and personal assets, is approximately $14 million. The words landed on that driveway like a thunderclap. I heard Tamsin gasp behind me. I heard something shatter, and I found out later it was the coffee mug she dropped on the porch. I heard Uncle Burl say something under his breath that I could not make out, and I heard absolutely nothing from my mother or my father. Not a word. Not a sound, just silence so thick I could feel it pressing against my back. But I was not looking at any of them. I was looking at the envelope. Mr. Croft handed it to me. My fingers were trembling so badly I nearly tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of cream-colored stationery, folded twice, covered in Dorothea's handwriting. I tried to read it, but my vision blurred before I finished the first line. Mr. Croft stepped closer and said gently, "Mrs. Pemberton asked that if you were unable to read it yourself, I should read a portion aloud. May I?" I nodded. I could not trust my voice. He took the letter carefully and read, "Corinne, I have lived 82 years on this earth, and in all that time, I have met very few people who are truly good. You are one of them. You came to me with nothing and you gave me everything, your time, your honesty, your heart. You never asked me for a single thing. You sat with me when I was afraid. You held my hand when I was in pain. The world failed you, Corinne, but I refuse to. Everything I have is yours, not because you earned it, though you did, because you deserve it. Live your life, sweetheart. Live it loud." I broke. Right there on that driveway in front of the family that threw me away, I broke down and cried harder than I have ever cried in my life. Not because of the money. The money meant nothing to me in that moment. I cried because someone finally said the words I had been waiting 31 years to hear. You deserve it. Someone saw me. Someone chose me. And she put it in writing so that nobody could ever take it back. Then I heard my mother's voice behind me. Corinne, honey, we always loved you. You know that, right? I turned around and looked at her. She was standing at the edge of the porch with her hands clasped together and her eyes wet. And for 1 second, just 1 second, I almost believed her. Then I remembered. I remembered every cruel word, every cold morning, every birthday she forgot, every time she told me I was a mistake while she braided Tamsin's hair. You told me I was still alive like it was a disappointment, I said. 7 years, Mom. 7 years, and that was your greeting. Dorothea held my hand every single day. She told me I mattered. You never did. Not once. My mother opened her mouth to respond, but Mr. Croft stepped forward and said calmly, I should also inform everyone present that this will has been fully reviewed by probate court. Reverend Amos Trueluck, a longtime acquaintance of Mrs. Pemberton and a community witness to Ms. Jessup's service, has provided a sworn affidavit supporting both Mrs. Pemberton's mental competence and the legitimacy of this bequest. Any legal challenge will be unsuccessful. Uncle Burl stepped forward. Now hold on a minute. You cannot just show up here and tell us that some old woman gave everything she had to a girl she barely knew. Mr. Croft turned to him with a look that could have frozen a river. Sir, Mrs. Pemberton knew Miss Jessup for 6 years. She trusted her with her finances, her health, and her home. That is not barely, and this matter is not open for discussion. He turned back to me. Miss Jessup, whenever you are ready, we can leave. I did not gloat. I did not scream. I did not throw their words back in their faces the way they deserved. I just stood there on that driveway and looked at the house I grew up in, the peeling paint, the sagging gutters, the porch light that had been broken since I was 16. Nothing had changed. That house was exactly the same as the day I left, and so were the people inside it. I turned to my father. He was sitting on the porch steps with his hands hanging between his knees, staring at the ground like a man who had just realized he lost something he could never get back. I walked up to him and stood close enough that he had to look at me. Dad, I said, you could have said one word, just one. In 31 years, all I needed was one word from you. You never gave it to me. He did not answer. His chin trembled and his eyes filled up, but he did not speak. Even now, even in this moment, Dale Jessup could not find his voice, and I finally understood that he never would. Not because he did not have the words, because he did not have the courage. I looked at Tamsin next. She was standing behind my mother with her arms crossed, but the smirk was gone. Her face was pale, and her jaw was tight, and she looked like a woman who had just watched the ground shift beneath her feet. I said, I hope your kids never feel the way you made me feel, Tamsin. I hope you figure out what kind of mother you want to be before they are old enough to remember. She did not say a word. For the first time in 27 years, my sister had nothing clever to say. Uncle Burl was leaning against the doorframe with his arms folded, still trying to look like the biggest man in the room. But his eyes kept darting to the black car and the 2 men in suits, and I could see it on his face. He was scared, not of them, of what they represented. They represented a world he could not talk his way into, and it was killing him. I did not say anything to Burl. He was not worth the breath. I turned to my mother last. Lorraine was still standing at the edge of the porch, with tears running down her cheeks. She reached out her hand and said, Corinne, please, let us talk about this. You are my daughter. I looked at her hand. The same hand that pointed me toward the door 7 years ago. The same hand that never once reached out to hold mine when I was afraid. I did not take it. I was always your daughter, I said. You just never treated me like one. Then I turned around and walked to the black car. Mr. Croft opened the door for me. I got inside. The leather seat was cool against my back, and the car smelled like cedar and clean linen. I looked through the tinted window at my family standing on that porch, and I felt something I never expected to feel. Not anger, not satisfaction, pity. I pitied them, because they spent so many years tearing me down that they never once stopped to notice I was the strongest person in that family. And now, it was too late. the car pulled away from the curb, and I did not look back. In the months that followed, I used Dorothea's gift to build something that would have made her proud. I established the Dorothea Pemberton Foundation, a nonprofit that provides scholarships and housing assistance to young women aging out of difficult family situations. Women like me, women who were told they were nothing and decided to prove the world wrong. In our first year, we helped 43 women get back on their feet. Dorothea would have loved every single one of them. I bought a home near the estate where she and I spent those 6 years together. I planted a garden in her memory. Every spring it blooms with white roses, her favorite, and I sit on the back porch in the evenings the same way she used to, with a cup of tea and the sound of the wind moving through the trees. I did not cut everyone off. 6 months after that day on the driveway, I sent my father a letter. Just one line. It is not too late to be my father. He showed up at my door 3 weeks later, alone, with tears on his face and no excuses on his lips. We are rebuilding. It is slow and it is hard, and some days I do not know if it will work, but he is trying, and trying is all I ever asked for. My mother, Tamsin, and Uncle Burl never reached out with genuine remorse. They tried twice to contest the will. Both attempts failed. Reverend Amos Trueluck testified both times, and Mr. Croft shut it down before it even reached a courtroom. They wanted the money. They did not want me. And that told me everything I needed to know. I spent my whole life thinking I was not enough. I thought something was broken inside me because my own mother could not love me. But Dorothea showed me the truth. I was never the broken one. I was just living in a broken house. And the moment I walked out that door, I started finding where I actually belonged. If this story reached something inside you, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever walked away from people who were supposed to love you? Have you ever found family in someone the world did not expect? Share your story because it matters, and someone out there needs to hear it tonight. And if this video moved you, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear these words today. And if you have not subscribed yet, go ahead and tap that subscribe button right now so you do not miss the next story. We are building something special on this channel, and I want you to be part of it. I will see you in the next one.